I'm sitting in my friend's living room, staring at a spreadsheet on her laptop, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around how she and her husband managed to cut their housing costs to zero every single month. They're not wealthy, they're not even close to being millionaires, but they've figured out a way to live in a beautiful home in a great neighborhood, without paying a single dollar in rent or mortgage. And the crazy part is, they're not even house hacking in the classical sense. They're not renting out rooms on Airbnb or taking in boarders. So, how are they doing it? That's what I want to dive into today. If you're like most people, you're probably thinking that housing is one of your biggest expenses, and you're right. For a lot of us, it's the biggest monthly bill we have. But what if I told you that there are ways to reduce that cost, or even eliminate it altogether? It's not just about finding a cheap apartment or negotiating a better rent. It's about thinking outside the box and finding creative solutions to the problem of housing. One of the things that my friends have done, which I think is really clever, is they've taken advantage of a little-known loophole in their city's zoning laws. It turns out that if you're willing to take on a certain amount of renovation work, you can get a significant discount on the purchase price of a home. And I'm not talking about just a few $1,000s. I'm talking about tens of thousands of dollars. In their case, they were able to get a $200,000 home for $120,000, just because they were willing to put in the work to fix it up. Now, I know what you're thinking. But I don't have the money to buy a home, let alone renovate one. And that's a fair point. Not everyone has the resources to take on a project like this. But here's the thing, my friends didn't have a lot of money either. They're a normal couple, with normal jobs, and a normal amount of savings. They just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and they were willing to take a chance on a fixer-upper. So, how did they manage to cut their housing costs to zero? Well, it's actually pretty simple. They took out a loan to cover the purchase price of the home, and then they used the discount they got from the city to pay off a big chunk of the loan. Then, they rented out a small portion of the home to a friend, which covers the rest of the mortgage payment. And because they're living in a home that they own, they don't have to pay any rent. It's a pretty clever system, and it's one that could work for a lot of people. But here's the thing, this isn't just about my friends, or their specific situation. This is about the fact that there are always creative solutions to the problems we face, if we're just willing to look for them. And when it comes to housing, there are a lot of different options out there, if you're willing to think outside the box. So, what's your biggest debt right now? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. One of the things that I've learned from my friends' experience is that house hacking doesn't have to mean renting out rooms on Airbnb, or taking in boarders. There are a lot of different ways to reduce your housing cost, and some of them might be more suitable to your lifestyle than others. For example, you could consider joining a housing cooperative, where you pool your resources with other homeowners to reduce your costs. Or, you could look into community land trusts, which allow you to purchase a home at a lower price, in exchange for agreeing to sell it back to the trust at a fixed price in the future. These are just a few examples, but the point is that there are a lot of different options out there, and you don't have to be limited by traditional thinking. So, if you're struggling to pay your rent or mortgage, I want to encourage you to think creatively about the problem. Don't just assume that you have to keep paying the same amount every month. Look for ways to reduce your cost, or even eliminate it altogether. If that just clicked for you, hit like, it tells me to keep making content like this. And if you know someone who's struggling to pay their rent or mortgage, send them this video. They might just find a solution that works for them. Now, I want to leave you with a challenge. For the next week, I want you to brainstorm as many creative solutions to the problem of housing as you can think of. Don't worry about whether or not they're practical, or whether or not they'll work, just let your mind run wild. And then, in the comments below, share one of your ideas with the community. You never know, you might just inspire someone to try something new. In my next video, I'll be talking about how to invest in real estate without buying a property. It's a topic that I've been getting a lot of questions about, and I think it's really important for anyone who's interested in building wealth. So, be sure to check it out. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to this channel. I'm always looking for new ways to help people achieve financial freedom, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. Let's talk about another example of creative housing solutions. I have a friend who lives in a rural area, and she was able to reduce her housing cost by 75% by building a tiny house on a piece of land that she inherited from her family. The tiny house cost her around $30,000 to build, and it's fully paid off, so she doesn't have to worry about making any mortgage payments. She also didn't have to pay any property taxes, because the land was already owned by her family, and she was able to get an exemption on the tiny house itself. This is a great example of how thinking outside the box can lead to some amazing solutions. My friend was able to reduce her housing cost to just $100 per month, which is almost unheard of in today's market. And the best part is, she loves her tiny house, and she feels like it's given her a sense of freedom and flexibility that she never thought possible. Now, I know that building a tiny house might not be for everyone, but it's definitely an option that's worth considering. And it's not just about the cost savings, either. Tiny houses can be a great way to simplify your life and reduce your environmental impact. Plus, they can be a lot of fun to design and build if you're the type of person who enjoys DIY projects. Another example of a creative housing solution is the concept of co-living. This is where a group of people come together to purchase a large property, and then they all live together in a communal setting. It's kind of like a big shared house, but with a lot more space and amenities. The best part is, the cost of the property is split among all of the residents, so it can be a really affordable option. I've seen co-living arrangements work really well in urban areas, where the cost of housing is particularly high. For example, a group of friends might come together to purchase a big old Victorian house, and then they'll all live together in the house, sharing the costs and the responsibilities. It's a great way to build a sense of community, and it can be a really fun and supportive living environment. In some cases, co-living arrangements can even be a good option for families. For example, a group of families might come together to purchase a large property, and then they'll all live together in a communal setting. This can be a great way to provide a supportive and stable environment for children, while also reducing the cost of housing. Of course, co-living arrangements aren't for everyone, and they do require a certain amount of compromise and flexibility. But for people who are looking for a more affordable and community-oriented living option, they can be a great choice. Let's talk about another example of a creative housing solution. I have a friend who was able to reduce her housing cost by 50% by participating in a local housing swap program. The program allowed her to swap her current home with another family who were looking to downsize. The swap was a win-win for both parties, because my friend was able to get into a smaller and more affordable home, while the other family was able to get into a larger home that was better suited to their needs. The best part about the housing swap program was that it didn't require any money to change hands. The two families simply swapped homes, and they both ended up with a more affordable and suitable living arrangement. This is a great example of how creative thinking can lead to some amazing solutions, and it's definitely something that's worth considering if you're looking to reduce your housing cost. In addition to housing swap programs, there are also a number of other creative housing solutions that are worth exploring. For example, some cities offer programs that allow people to purchase homes at a discounted price, in exchange for agreeing to live in the home for a certain number of years. These programs can be a great option for people who are looking to get into a home, but who may not have the financial resources to do so. Another example of a creative housing solution is the concept of a community land trust. This is where a non-profit organization purchases a piece of land, and then sells it to a homeowner at a discounted price. The homeowner then agrees to sell the land back to the trust at a fixed price in the future, which helps to keep the cost of housing affordable. Community land trusts can be a great option for people who are looking to get into a home, but who may not have the financial resources to do so.